After hearing that, I don't have to say anything, but I did prepare to tell you a little bit of my story and the story of the awards, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I want to take off from something that Zheng said, which is that the definition of who is an American affects so many other issues, and it cuts to my core. My mother and her family were among the 110,000 Americans put into camps by the US government during World War II solely because of their Japanese heritage, an experience that has colored my life and shaped who I am. It's made me passionate about supporting people who are excluded from the definition of who is an American, and it has drawn me into the cause of immigrant rights. Today, we honor the people who are unsung heroes and heroines in the struggle. These awards started with an honor that Geri and I received in 2009 for creating a funders collaborative called the Four Freedoms Fund to support immigrant rights and integration. It came with a $10,000 prize, and we realized that we had an unusual opportunity to increase it and pay it forward. We tapped into the generosity of friends, family, and colleagues to increase the amount and to create the Freedom from Fear Award for people who take a courageous stand for immigrants and human rights, who never expect to be recognized for what they're doing, and whose example spurs others to action and to awareness. We received 380 nominations from 42 states, and we were so inspired reading them. With the help of a terrific selection committee, we narrowed them down to a group of 15, 4 of whom you'll meet tonight. Together, they represent the diversity of how people are contributing to humanity and inclusion in America today. Like the 4 Trail of Dream students, Gabby, Juan, Carlos, and Felipe, who are here with us in this room. Will you stand up? It seems like you've met them. They walked from Miami to Washington, D.C. to dramatize the barriers that undocumented immigrants face. Like the police chief who was vilified for speaking out against local enforcement of federal immigration laws. The African-American legislator from Mississippi who led his city in passing an ordinance to prohibit the racial profiling of immigrants by police. 4 Asian high school students who were both victims and campaigners against violence in the schools, and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer undocumented youth spurring others to come out of the shadows and claim their whole selves. These are only a handful of the many unbelievable leaders around the country. Some of them are unlikely. All of them demonstrate by their actions their love of humanity, and remind us that at its heart, this debate about immigration is not only about policy, it's about human beings. Well, now I'm delighted to turn the mic over to another source of inspiration to me, my dear friend and colleague, Geri Mannion.
Thank you, Taryn. And I just have to say I wouldn't be here without Taryn. You know, we have been very good, both colleagues and friends, and it was together that we founded the Four Freedoms Fund, but with a lot of other wonderful colleagues and a great staff at the Public Interest Projects, and we thank them all for their work on this. But like Taryn, woohoo! But like Taryn, and actually like Cenk as well, you know, my parents actually chose to come to the United States. They were immigrants from Ireland who came with their 2 little girls about 50 years ago and settled first in Pittsburgh and then in the Bronx. Like the immigrants of today, our families came to pursue their American dream and have experienced opportunity and hardship. And Taryn and I represent their dreams, their ambitions, and their legacies. It is their example that spurs us to work to ensure that the dream remains attainable for today's immigrants. From our work in philanthropy, we know that immigrants renew democracy, and that by upholding their rights, we strengthen human rights for all Americans. Whether today's immigrants are here legally or not, they are all at risk each and every day of being separated from their families, detained without due process, or forced to live in the shadows of our society. Today's fight for immigration reform is not just a struggle for immigrant rights and for integration. It is a struggle for the soul of our nation. We ask that all of you join us in working on behalf of immigrants as our wonderful and fearless awardees do each and every day. Not all of us can win awards, but we can all commit acts of courage. In doing so, we will ensure our nation lives up to its promise. I'm now going to turn it back to Taryn to introduce our first awardee, the Immigrant Youth Justice League. Thank you.
So thank you, Geri, and I now have the honor of introducing Tania, Unzueta, Rigo, Padilla, and Reyna, Wences. These are three brave young people from Chicago who formed the Immigrant Youth Justice League after they successfully waged a campaign in 2009 to stop the deportation of one of them. Drawing inspiration from the LGBTQ and immigrant rights movements, they organized 2 national Coming Out of the Shadows days, and they galvanized Dream students from around the country to declare themselves undocumented and unafraid. They and the other award winners will receive a $5,000 prize and this beautiful fine art print designed by Fabiana Rodriguez, who's a brilliant artist and activist. You can see it up close outside of this main hall at her booth. And I now want to give it to Tania, to Rigo and Reyna with our deepest, deepest thanks and respect.
My name is Rigo, and I'm undocumented.
My name is Reyna, and I'm undocumented and queer.
And my name is Tania, and I'm also undocumented and queer. Thank you. Before I tell you about our work, I want to tell you about why it's so crucial for the 3 of us here today to say out loud the words undocumented and queer. To do this, I would like to quote gay liberation activist and one of our favorite politicians, Harvey Milk. He said, "You must come out. You must come out to your parents. I know that it is hard and that it will hurt them, but think about how they will hurt you in the voting booth. Come out to your friends, come out to your neighbors, but for once and for all, break down the myths and distortions." So here I am today, coming out to all of you, with all of my friends behind me. Except that my coming out is about being an undocumented immigrant. I lived in Chicago with my sister and my parents since I was 10 years old. It's where I grew up, where I learned about community, friendship, and love. It is where I have learned what freedom and injustice feels like and about the lengths to which people have gone to defend them. It is where I have learned to organize, to blog, and to tweet. And so, with all of its complexities, I love this country and I consider it my home. But it is hard, so very hard to live in a country where you are called a criminal and to know that I don't have the same rights as my peers. To live in a place where I have to live in fear under constant threat of deportation and where I have seen my friends and family disappear for the same reasons. When I was 17 years old, I was advised to go to Mexico to find an international student visa. And without guarantee of being allowed to return, I chose to go, feeling that I would not just let my immigration status or unjust immigration laws stop my plans for an education. While I was there, I learned that every year 65,000 undocumented immigrants graduate from US high schools, just like I had. For the first time there, I felt that I was not alone and that my experiences were valid and that my frustrations reflected systematic inequalities that needed to be addressed because I wasn't the only one facing them. I was able to come back, a story for another time, but I was able to experience what it meant to speak about my own experiences, and I began to understand that every time that I told my story, it was one of those 65,000 stories that needed to be said out loud. When I came back, I was on my way to testify in front of the US Senate as I watched 2 planes crash into the Twin Towers in New York City. I had my plane ticket for September 11, 2001. And the government's response was to turn everything around immigration into a conversation of national security and terrorism. And so I decided to advocate more quietly, go to school and try to live my life. And so I started going to college. And actually, that's about the time when I started liking girls. And I had to go through the experience of coming out as queer to my family and who wasn't happy about it. But this experience led me to understand what it meant to be able to come out as undocumented and to be able to have our own lives and control of our own lives, our own stories. I want to say thank you to our parents who first we saw, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. When we began coming out, thank you. We began coming out in meetings, and it felt really good. And we wanted to be able to share that feeling with other undocumented youth, to be able to have control over our own stories, and to be able to know, to use the strategies of past movements, including the LGBT movement. So we were inspired, and we asked other undocumented youth to come out of the shadows and declare themselves undocumented and afraid. We co-founded the Immigrant Youth Justice League, and on March 10, 2010, we organized the first National Coming Out of the Shadows Day. Since then, undocumented young people around the country have made that message their own. We've heard of people who have come out to their friends, their one friend, sometimes in a little town somewhere, and we know the power that that has to change minds. We have also been part of and organized and participated in all sorts of ways civil disobediences, where for the first time undocumented young people have gotten arrested, taking control of the risks we want and do not want to take. And all of this has been part of trying to live our lives, coming out, and living our lives undocumented and unafraid. And so to end, just a few words for those who are not standing here with us, but have always stood next to us. To our parents, the first people who we saw show fearlessness, we are proud of you. Thank you for bringing us to the United States. To our peers, undocumented youth who show fearlessness every day by surviving, and to those undocumented youth who, despite tangible risks, take actions that move us forward. To our friends at the Immigrant Youth Justice League, at the Dream is Coming, and at the National Immigrant Youth Alliance. And to you who are listening here to my story, I ask you to stand with us, to help us create safe spaces for young undocumented people, whether that means in your classroom by changing the curriculum, in your organization by being inclusive, in your community, in your state, in our country. Reyna once said, "We're all human beings and we deserve to be happy," and I ask you to help us create that country. Thank you.